City of Stevens Point Plan Commission meeting, recorded July 6, 2020.
Okay, I have 6 p.m. We will call the Plan Commission meeting to order. Director Konoski, you want to do a quick roll call?
Weeza.
Here.
Kneebone.
Here.
Artson.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Haynes.
Here.
Hoppy.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, everyone is present, so we will move on. A couple of housekeeping things. Please keep your phone on mute unless you are speaking. Commissioners, if you unmute to vote, that would be completely appropriate. For those of you who wish to speak during any of the items, especially the public hearings, we will try and allow ample time. If those of you on video, you can wave your hand or indicate somehow that you want to speak. Those of you who are not participating in video, we will just make an open call for comments, and there may be a little bit of people talking at the same time, but we'll try and be courteous. So you'll have to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and then you will be allowed to participate in the public comment. We will do our very best to go slow and give everybody an opportunity. I know these meetings virtually are still a little bit cumbersome for some, but with a little patience and courtesy, we'll get through it. Item number 2 is on page 4 of your packets, Commissioners, and that is the report from the June 1st, 2020 meeting of the Plan Commission. Are there any questions or corrections? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve that.
This is Cooper. I would motion to approve those minutes as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I will second, Commissioner Arnson.
Seconded by Arnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes are approved. Item number 3 is on page 20 of your packet, and it's a public hearing regarding the proposed project plans, boundaries, and creation of tax incremental districts numbers 11, 12, and 13. The notices for public hearing were published on June 19th and June 26th. Director Konoski, can you give us a little rundown of what we're going to be talking about tonight?
Absolutely. Thank you,
Mayor.
Mayor.
Hang on.
Hold on. Mayor, all I see on my screen and Director Konoski is the first page of the agenda. I can't get it to move up. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
All right.
Director, back to you.
Okay. So before you tonight is a public hearing on TIF districts number 11, 12, and 13. It should be noted that TIF district number 12, that public hearing has been postponed to July 27th at 6 o'clock. We'll have that discussion during the director's report. But essentially what we have to do tonight, and with us tonight as well is Dawn Gunderson from Ellers, who's the city's financial advisor and specializes in tax increment finance districts, is we're going to host the public hearing. The Plan Commission is going to recommend approval or denial for resolutions to the City Council. Each of the TIF district project plans is within the packet tonight, and I hope that you read those before coming and you have any questions. We'll do our best to get them answered today. So we're going to go through each public hearing or each TIF district project plan. As you can see, TIF number 11 is the Convent and Division Street Overlay TIF district. TIF 12, which again has been postponed, is the Church Street TIF district. We won't be discussing that tonight again. And then TIF 13 is the proposed East Side TIF district, which encompasses the former Walmart and Cobb's property. And so at this time, I'll turn it over to Dawn. She should be able to share her screen in just a second. Sorry.
Just as a reminder, when we open the public hearing, that will only be for district proposals 11 and 13. We will not
Correct.
be talking about the Church Street proposal tonight at a public hearing. That will be held at a later date. So Dawn, whenever you're ready.
I gotta stop sharing my screen.
Can you see my screen now?
Not quite, try again.
Okay. Oh, I can hit one more button. Okay, now can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first talk a little bit about proposed TIF district number 11, which, as Ryan mentioned, is the Convent Division Street TIF. And the properties, and we'll show you a map in a moment, is presently, there are some of the parcels that are currently in tax increment district number 5. So this district will be intended as what we call an overlay for a portion of the properties.
You want to be able to hear it, but I want to be muted.
And
Joining.
so one of the first steps in creating a tax increment district, we look
Hang on, Dawn.
Video.
Alderperson Nabel needs to get muted. Can you do that since you're the host now? Armin,
Oh,
can
I'm
you
sorry.
mute yourself?
Give your sound up. So. Yes.
Okay.
Armin, can you mute yourself, please? Dawn, if you can find Cindy Nabel on your screen.
Right. Now I've got to get back to the, at this point when I share my screen, I have to figure out where that's at.
Yeah.
If you go down to where it says participants, you should be able to see that at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, now I'm sharing screen, though it's not giving me the.
Because, wait a minute. It's a whole different than what it looks like.
Armin, can you hear me?
I'm meeting
Armin,
control, I'm not.
Cindy?
Okay. Just saying, I don't. It keeps changing on me right now.
That's the problem when we have another person controlling it. Are you able to find it?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not finding. I'm not. Well, let me see if I can mute him just from his.
Cindy Nabel is who you're looking for.
Yeah, I see his little. Let me just switch. I'm okay. I can mute him now.
There you go.
Okay,
all right.
Got it.
Now we're back on.
I had it just to the speaker view, and so that was limiting me.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Thanks,
now
Dawn.
I got it. Okay. So anyway, the first step in creating a new tax increment district is defining the boundaries and identifying each of the properties that's located within it and establishing what's referred to as the base value. And that's the present value of each of the properties within the tax increment district. And that's basically frozen in time. And then it's the improvements above and beyond that. So at this point, we've estimated the base value of this district will be about 22.6 million. One of the things to note is the city is approaching the 12% cap for tax increment districts, meaning that no more than 12% of the property within the city can be included in a tax increment district. And the city has been successful in a lot of the districts that are currently in place. So as we bump up against that, we have a limited amount of value that we can add into that 12% test as we create new districts. So this district is getting close to that capacity. However, because we're overlaying tax increment district number 5 for a certain number of those parcels, we can subtract that the value of those parcels out of the calculation to determine that we meet that test. So the values of what is currently in TID 5 is roughly 11.6 million. So this district will be about $11 million base. The proposal is that tax increment district number 11 will be considered a blight district. There's a statutory definition of blight, and it's not as frightening as the word that is used to describe the district. So it does not mean that all the property in the district is by nature blight. There's obviously some criteria that fit within it. The city has gone through each of those parcels, and we've determined that about 60% of the area could meet that statutory definition. And the requirement is that at least 50% of the area is, so that test has also been met with this determination. So on the screen now is a copy of the boundaries that are being proposed to be included. And it is kind of an illustration that overlays a little bit of tax increment district number 5. So if you can see the area that's in blue in the upper right, which is the northeast side of the district, those areas are part of TID District number 5 and will remain part of TID District number 5. The areas to the northwest that's identified as red will be part of the new District 11, and any area that's more red, and some of the areas that are kind of a pink or purple color is the portion that's being overlaid. So we've laid that red over the blue and we're getting kind of a pink or purple color. So these are all the parcels that will be included in there. Anything that's either in the red or the purple tone colors, those will be part of what's in the new proposed district number 11. So the project plan, which was provided for you in the packet of material, I'm going to highlight a few of the schedules that are included in that and talk a little bit about the proposal of the plan. So part of the process of creating a district is you identify the type of project cost that would be necessary to promote the new development opportunities in the area. So staff has put together a fairly extensive list of what they believe would be necessary project cost, and they include some infrastructure improvements for roadway, utility, and some intersection improvements, and again, some reconstruction of various roads, possible land acquisition, and development incentives. Now, just because we've identified these as project costs doesn't mean that the city will undertake each and every one of these. The tax increment district is a plan, it's not a budget. So as, and you always, and I'll mention this more than once, is that the pace of the project costs will be paced with development. So the intent is that the city does not go out and put in all these costs and incur in issuing debt or incur these project costs and are sitting around waiting for development to happen. We don't want to see that. So it's always important that things are paced. So we've identified these costs as being potential necessary costs within the area. Again, some of them or all of them will take place during the life of this tax increment district. So again, I've mentioned the types of costs. The way that the plan to finance these would be generally the upfront public infrastructure costs that may be necessary would be financed with debt issued by the city. It would be tax exempt. That's how we're illustrating it in the analysis that we've prepared. However, the city reserves the right to finance project costs any way they want. If there's additional cash available within the district over time, they certainly can use that without issuing debt. We've identified some incentives that may be provided to developers to encourage development, or if there's some gap in their need for development. These would probably be financed in some combination, either through the issuance of upfront debt, and that would probably be taxable, or what we refer to as a pay-as-you-go incentive, where the money is paid out to a developer over time based upon the value that they generate in the project. So anytime there's an incentive provided, the city would enter into a developer's agreement. That agreement would spell out the conditions and any sort of dollars that are being provided. They would also, and the city has been very diligent in this in the past, would provide some guarantees that the development would happen, and there would be benchmarks at to what point that incentive may be provided. Again, I'm going to emphasize that the timing of the financing of projects and the offering of any incentives should coincide with the timing of development. So we've estimated development potential within this district, and we've estimated timing of that, and you'll see that momentarily in a chart, but at this point, staff has estimated that approximately $70 million or just over $70 million of potential future value could be created within these boundaries. And since the district it's a blight district, it has a statutory life of 27 years. So there would be 27 years of revenue potential collection. And over that 27-year time period, based upon our timing of development, it would generate about $34.7 million of future tax revenues. Now, we have assumed at this point no appreciation on any new development or any existing development, and we've held a constant tax rate, and you'll see that momentarily in one of the projection slides. So based upon this methodology, We would anticipate this district could potentially close in 2045. Again, that's assuming all the project costs are undertaken and all the development actually happens as we've identified it in the scope of this analysis. So the next couple pages, again, are part of the tax increment district plan. This page is referred to as the development assumptions. And Ryan may speak more to this momentarily, but you know, this particular district will differ a little bit from 13, as we're assuming that there potentially could be some development early on in an initial phase. So we've got some of this coming on beginning for construction in 2021, phased out for 12 years, and then a second phase not starting till maybe 2025, and then phased in incrementally for through 2030. So again, these are assumptions that we've built in for this analysis. And the premise for this is we wanted to look at the project cost, the development that could be generated, and ensure that that development could help support the project costs that have been laid out. Now, the next schedule is what we refer to as a tax increment worksheet. This is where we take that assumed new development value when in a creation of a TIF district, anything that's built in 1 year, and so you can see on line number 2, anything that would be built in 2021 first becomes assessable on the tax rolls in January of 2022. And the first time you would collect actual tax increment dollars on that district would be in 2023. The bills go out at the end of 22, they're not payable in 2023. So on this schedule, we're forecasting that revenue stream beginning in 2023. And that basis of that is looking at that new value times the city's current equalized tax rate. We've held that constant for the life of the district. And the benefit of TIF is it's a consolidated tax rate. So the dollars that are generated in this area, you collect not only the city's taxes, but the technical colleges, the school district, and the county's taxes as well. So you've got the power of everyone's tax support to help pay for any of those project costs. So this is the revenue stream that we forecasted to be about $34.7 million. And it's that revenue stream that will assist in paying for project cost. And the last schedule, and again, these are included in that project plan, is we bring together all the numbers. So starting basically from the left-hand side of this, and I realize it's too small to actually read these numbers, but I'll kind of tell you what they represent. On the left-hand side is that revenue stream. That's that $34.7 million we referred to on the previous slide. That revenue coming in, we've identified some capitalized interest. So the initial borrowing that the city may undertake, we would capitalize and borrow for some of that interest. And then the next series of columns that are kind of under the green heading of expenditures are those proposed or anticipated financings. And they're made up of several different things. Some are upfront debt by the city, both on a tax exempt and a taxable basis, depending on what they're paying for. And the rest would be what we call a municipal revenue obligation or a pay-go incentive that's paid out over time as the increment is available. And one of those measures that's usually put into place on those pay-goes is, you know, some of the city debt gets paid first before any of those incentives get paid out. So this is kind of structured in that fashion. And again, this cash flow is under the assumption that the development happens as we've identified and the projects are undertaken as we've identified. And if all that were to happen as planned, and we know this is just a plan, so there's most likely there will be some changes that will be looked at each and every year by the city to determine what it can afford to undertake, because we don't want to see any red on this schedule. But with these assumptions in place, the line that's kind of identified in a beige color towards the bottom at 2045 is when there's enough revenue available in the cumulative cash flow of the district to pay off any obligations that they've incurred. So from the analysis that we've done for the city to move forward with tax increment district number 11, is the analysis demonstrates that the proposed or potential development would be sufficient to cover all of the project costs that have been identified here. And I will pause at this point and allow Ryan to expound on anything else you'd like to cover in terms of the project.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of times when we put these types of TIF plans together, we're using some projections, some that are provided by developers and some that are provided by staff. In this case with TIF number 11, the phase 1 was provided by the developer. Phase 1 would encompass most of the convent property development. Phase 2 would be what we would expect to occur outside the convent area. Of course, with any development or with any developer, we are going to be very, very conscious that we're not spending more than what we'd be getting in with revenue to make sure that this TIF works over the lifetime of it. And that'll be, on the council as these development agreements come out. It'll be on staff as we negotiate development agreements and incentives with any developer, really. And so I've kind of utilized TIF 11 as the lowest hanging fruit. We have a developer who's knocking, who's been working with the sisters, who we've been creating a plan that will be at some point ready to go public with. But this is one of those last steps before we can go forward with redevelopment of the convent property and redevelopment of the several underutilized or underdeveloped parcels along the Division Street corridor. Finally, when we look at the targeted area master plan that the city adopted in February for Division Street, this starts to implement some of those items that were identified in the targeted area master plan. Staff would recommend approval. There is a minor boundary adjustment that we did check with DOR on. We should be able to do. It adds one of the Point Med properties that's west of Vincent Court. That was the one Point Med property that was overlooked when we were putting this together. And so as long as we add that parcel ID that's identified within the staff report, we should be good to go to include that as part of the TIF number 11. Mayor, I would also add before we start the public hearing that there are 3 items of correspondence, one from the Sisters of St. Joseph in support of the TIF, one from the Katzmark family opposed to the TIF, and then one from Point Med Properties, Amy Fairchild, support of the TIF and support of adding her property at 508, 520, and 608 Vincent Street to the TIF itself.
Thank you, Director. We will open up the public hearing for TIF 11. We're going to take these separately, I assume, Director? Yeah.
Whichever way we want to go about it, I would recommend we do it separately.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. So public hearing in regards to the proposed TIF 11 is now open.
Mayor, would you like me to turn over
that would be helpful.
Back to you or to Ryan?
I think it would be helpful to have me do it.
Okay,
please.
I'll do that right now.
Okay, now I am hosting. And how do we get rid of your shared screen?
Oh, I can do that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Now I can see everybody a little bit better. Okay, the public hearing for TIF 11 is open.
This is Commissioner Haynes. I'd like to ask a question about the future land use of this area. I'm not clear at all about what it is, and it's all based on development, but I don't know what that means. Is it all, there's portions that are currently commercial, there's a portion that's convent, like obviously that will change. So I'm uncomfortable personally making a decision on this without having any idea of what the future land use could be.
Okay. Normally we wouldn't do that during a public hearing, Commissioner, but because I think it's important that people understand that, we will suspend the public hearing temporarily, and I'll turn it over to Director Konoski, who could talk about it. We don't obviously have a crystal ball to see what everything is going to be 10, 15, 20 years down the road, but we do our best. Director?
Sure. So the future land use of these TIF districts is going to have to be consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. In the city's comprehensive plan, Division Street continues to be a commercial corridor. The long-term plan for Division Street is doing more mixed-use development, bringing more of the university to Division Street as well. The convent specifically, we're looking at a higher density residential development. Anything from townhomes to apartment buildings on the parcel that's adjacent to the convent. Without showing too much, the convent itself would be repurposed to some type of residential development itself. So anything that we would go and when we get to the site plans for each specific development, we would have to identify that it's consistent with the city's comprehensive plan or the targeted area master plan. And if it wasn't, we have to go through the process of amending the city's future land use map to make it consistent with what's being proposed.
So are we operating on our old plan from whenever the date was?
Yeah, so we haven't updated we're still operating under the 2005 comprehensive plan for the area outside the Division Street corridor, but the targeted area master plan does have some future land use, and when we do the final update for the comprehensive plan, we will include that as part of that document.
Okay. And again, each project will have to stand on its own merit as this comes, as they come along. So with that, we will reconvene the public hearing. Persons who wish to address the commission on items related to TID 11's proposal, please indicate somehow that you'd like to speak or unmute yourself. Carol, Carol's iPad. I'm not sure who that is, but you're on.
All right, Carol Katzmark on Division Street, and Ryan Karnowski had just said that we were one of the houses that had written a letter that opposed the TIF. And I guess it was more so because like what just was stated, we weren't sure what the what changes were going to be made. And living on Division Street, we really, right now, it's a busy street, and being a residential home on this street, getting in and out of our driveway is a challenge. And down the future, we really would prefer not to have the road Division Street widen, taking away from our driveway, because if that happens, we're not going to be able to safely get in and out of our driveway. So as we weren't sure what the changes were, so that's why we wrote the letter when he had said that. So as to being more for or against, we would feel more comfortable knowing what, what changes we're going to make, so that then you can vote for or against it.
Thank you, Carol. And is there anyone else wishing to speak in the public hearing? Public hearing remains open. There you go, Trevor. Go ahead, you're on.
Hey, can you hear me okay? All right, thanks. Trevor Rourke, 601 Washington Avenue. So TIF, I think, is a complex subject that even I don't grasp sometimes. It's kind of difficult. I watched the feasibility study, the presentation by Illers from the Finance Committee meeting recently. And I actually called Director Karnowski today to ask some questions. I talked a little bit about the history of TID 5, and it sounds like it's been going for about 15 years or so. He mentioned that it was successful. And when I looked at the facilities and the buildings within that TID, it doesn't look that way. As you pointed out multiple times in the presentation, even tonight, it's bladed. There's statute on how it's defined. So I asked clarification. He said it was financially successful. So I think that's great that it is. And he's mentioned mainly because of Century, it's kind of the cornerstone there. But I'm just wondering about the rest. So we have a lot of area that still looks blighted, even though this is a successful TIF. So I have concern about that. Further, it's very difficult to walk to and bike to and through to get to any of the strip malls, stores, lots. It's not easy to access depending on who you are. So I kind of think of it as like more of a mislabel of success and sort of a disconnect between economy and place, economy and ecology. So in other words, there's like all these costs not built in to this term success. So like the runoff that comes from all these surfaces, the loss of walkability, etc. So
Trevor, are you referring to TIF District 5 or District 11? We're talking about District 11 right now.
Yep, TIF 5 was the background. Sorry, I didn't put TIF 11 into to clarify further, but yes. So yeah, historically TIF 5, but altogether TIF 11. Thank you. So I think there's these external costs that we're kind of missing when we think of a successful TIF. To the point Commissioner Haynes just made, I guess I do have a question of clarification. If UWSP's property is coming closer, encroaching onto division, which I'm not against, unless it's more parking lot, I would say I'm wondering, is that affect negatively the taxable value of the land within the TIF? Because I know, they're not taxed; they pay a pilot payment in lieu of taxes. So I don't know how that construes the taxable value. So maybe that could be answered a little bit. But to summarize, I am against this because there's also money flowing out of Stevens Point as well, because this kind of tailors to big developers, larger developers that it's kind of a first come, first serve, if you will, even though there's negotiations, obviously. Because of the 11 years of phasing of, phase one being 11 years, it's pretty quick when you look at all that investment that's going to happen. So these bigger projects are more fragile as well. So I'm wondering if, there could be more incremental development instead of this proposed TIF. So thank you.
Thank you. The public hearing is still open. Public hearing remains open. And for the third time, the public hearing remains open. Holly Dalton, I saw you took yourself off of mute. Did you have comments? You're actually on twice. Okay, I don't believe so. I don't see anything in the chat. Alder Dalton says she does not have comments. I don't see any virtual hands raised. I don't see any physical hands raised. So with that, I will declare the public hearing closed on TID District 11. Director, do you want to move right into the resolution, or do you want to do TID 13 right away?
I think it's worthwhile to have the discussion on the resolution at this time.
Okay, so then commissioners, we will move into item number 4 with the, we'll come back to item 3 with the public hearings. This is a consideration of possible action on a resolution designating the proposed boundaries and approving a project plan for TID 11 in the city of Stevens Point. Director, do you have anything to add? Or I see Commissioner Arntzen there. Were you going to make a motion, sir?
Well, no, maybe I should have brought this up in the public hearing part of it. I'm never sure if I'm supposed to speak during the Plan Commission part of the public hearing, but I'm somewhat familiar with that western portion of the convent property. I know that there's a fair bit of wetlands out there, and it's a pretty significant drainage way and used for stormwater management. There are, they've cut back on the wetland regulations. And so one thing that I'd be concerned about is allowing wetland fill in that area is the main thing. And also limiting the development in that area. I wouldn't want to see a whole bunch of construction next to all the wetlands. And I think I saw in here that there's an allotment for conservancy in there. I'd be interested to see what that is. The fact is that entire parcel 72, I would like to see remain in conservancy just because of the factors of stormwater drainage, wetland protection, and similar information. I don't know if that's been looked at. Maybe that's part of the proposal, but that's my perspective, and I guess I have some concerns about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Director, do you want to answer that? My comment initially was that we're just providing the boundaries of the TIF. Any developments within there would have to stand on, again, on their own merit. In this case, the convent, we have a little bit of information already, and that'll be coming in front of the Plan Commission soon enough, but I'll turn it over to the director to explain a little further.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time we would take these comments, we would get into the nitty gritty details of specific developments that could happen within the district. But I think Commissioner Arntzen brings up a good point. On the north side of that parcel, there is some significant wetland. And I will tell you that the preliminary development plan does have a wetland corridor included as part of it. The city may look at doing a boardwalk with a developer similar to the one that's in Schmeekley Reserve. That provides a nature reserve, but also still allows us to develop the south side of the parcel for residential development.
But again, that would come into play when we talk about the specific development,
correct?
Not on the boundaries of TID 11. All right, commissioners, the resolution is before you. What are your wishes?
This is Commissioner Hoppy, and I will move approval of the resolution for TIF District 11.
Thank you. It looks like we have a second by Kneebone.
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Commissioner Rice.
Yes, sir.
I guess just some kind of anecdotal observation. Maybe curious to hear from some of the other commissioners. So some of the previous TID districts I know seem to be based on a more kind of large scale community need. You know, the Division Street corridor in general, downtown, the business part where we can look at a lot of kind of similar and related development. This TID 11 outside of the Division Street stuff that currently exists in TID 5, I mean, is largely two property owners, or one potential property owner, it sounds like, for the convent, and then off of the Vincent Drive cul-de-sac. And obviously I don't have experience, you know, and how these kind of negotiations take place, but I guess to me, and maybe it's just optics, it seems like a developer came in and said, I like a property in your town and I'd like to develop it, and I'd like some money to develop it. And we're creating a TID to somewhat appease a single development, as opposed to looking at a larger chunk of the community and looking at all of the needs in that community and coming up with kind of a consensus that, oh yeah, obviously there needs to be kind of mass improvement, or we've got kind of a larger scale goal of more housing, more economic development. This just seems different to me. And again, maybe it's just kind of optics or my observation, but I wanted to bring it up. Curious if any of the other commissioners had any input.
Sure, and Director, I'll add some comment to that. In part, in a small part, what you're saying is correct. The convent development became part of the TID 11 boundary because they are looking at development. However, the greater picture is the fact that TID 5 has 11 years left, and we just recently completed the target area master plan for that entire area. So with 11 years left on that TID 5, it doesn't always work financially for developers to come in and do it with only 11 years left of that incentive. By expanding the boundary, we've done a couple of things. We have re-incentivized that area along with the broader picture that we've more recently come up with through the Division Street Master Plan, and allowing any potential development, or more importantly, to what Trevor was talking about, any improvements in the physical infrastructure now can get spread out over a longer term, which makes it more financially responsible on the city's part. Those are my 2 cents. Director Konoski, anything to add?
Yeah, I do. And part of the reason we're having this discussion now and not in 6 months or not in a year is that we are likely going to be over the 12% equalized value rule that the state imposes on the city, simply stating that the value of our properties within our TIF districts, our existing districts, cannot exceed 12% of our total equalized value in the city. And so we're in a place now where either we need to create these districts and prepare ourselves or put us in a place where we're able to reinvest in the convent, the Division Street area, the south side by Church Street, the east side, or we need to be prepared to not have development and increase of development in those areas until after we fall below the 12% equalized value rule, which could be 12 to 15 years from now. So typically how I think that cities like to do these types of things is we like to have a development in place before we would create a TIF district, and we'd have everything lined up, you know, the development agreement that says, okay, developer A is going to develop $25 million worth of new construction in the city. The city will provide this type of incentive and create the TIF district. Unfortunately, we're not in a place where we can do that. We are bumping up against the deadline to get these TIF districts created. I don't disagree with Commissioner Rice. I think that in a different situation, we would do things a little bit differently. But given the situation that we're faced with the success of our existing TIF districts and being right up against that 12% equalized value rule, now is the time for us to act. Again, staff would recommend approval with the addition of that parcel ID identified within the staff memo.
And just for clarification, financial success as well as economic success on some of these. So just want to be clear on that. Alderperson Kneebone.
Yeah, I tend to look at these as tools that we have in our city's toolbox, our development toolbox. Just because we make something a TIF doesn't mean we have to give incentives. If we don't, we lose the opportunity for, I can't remember how many years again, Director, but 10 or so years into the future. To me, it's kind of, it's a little making sure that we're able to react in the moment when we need to down the line.
Thank you. And that's really what it comes down to. And I don't know that we can stress this enough. August 15th, we will be extremely likely in surpassing our limits in that regard, which means we would not be able to do any new TIF projects or TIDs until that threshold was low, until we fell below the threshold. So we're, as I mentioned earlier, we're kind of looking at a crystal ball here to try and figure out what we might be able to do and plan that out, because as Director Konoski said and Alderperson Kneebone touched on, we may not hit that threshold again for 10 to 12, maybe even 15 years. So we wouldn't be able to do anything. So we're trying to anticipate where we might be able to incentivize development. And that's what the 3 districts are that you have before you. So hopefully that answers your question, Alderperson Kneebone. The motion is to approve the resolution for TID 11. Is there any other comments on that? I see Director Arnson took his off mute. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to clarify the deadline issue, you can establish TIF TIDs while you're still under the 12% threshold, but once you exceed the 12% threshold, you cannot establish a TID. But going into it, you can establish a TID that would put you over the 12% threshold before you get there?
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Okay, once again, the motion is to approve the resolution for the proposed boundaries and approving a project plan for tax incremental district number 11. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Reluctantly, aye.
Are there any opposed? One more time, are there any opposed? Oop, that passes unanimously. Next up, we will have Dawn talk to us. So actually, we'll start with Ryan, I suppose, talking about tax incremental district 13, or do we want to approve the resolution for 12 without the public hearing?
We cannot approve the resolution. Again, resolution or TIF number 12, which is the Church Street area, that was postponed to July 27th. So
and that's item number 5, right, Director?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so then we will move on to District 13.
Okay, thank you. So district number 13 is on the east side of the city, out near the old Walmart, now Dunham Sports, and the former Cops grocery store. That area has been designated as a blight elimination district, simply identifying that the area is underdeveloped and underutilized, given the infrastructure and the land use that's been out there historically. The city has spent several years trying to find a developer to come in and do a project out there. And every time someone's come in to say, all right, we have an interest in doing a project out there, whether it be a hotel or apartments or housing, anything like that, we've continuously run into the issue of the developer wanting some type of incentive or wanting some type of assistance, creating new infrastructure or addressing the stormwater issues that we have out in this side of the city. Even though the city has taken some steps to address the stormwater concerns, that is one of the projects that's been identified as part of this. Again, you know, staff's approach to this, if specifically, is here's your last chance for 12, 15 years to do something out here. It is more likely that a project will occur with some type of assistance from the city out here if the district is created, as opposed to saying, okay, we're not going to do TIF 13, we'll let it happen organically. Staff and you know, even previous community development staff have worked with developers to do something out there. And again, the answer has always been, well, we need some type of assistance to make a project go in this part of the city. Additionally, because it's blighted, and it's really important to remember that as you drive into town from Highway 10, this is one of the first things you see, and one of the last things you see as you drive out of town. It does not provide a sense of economic vitality that we all know the city of Stevens Point has. And this is something that staff feels as though here's an opportunity to do something and to try to get a project going. Again, and I'm sure Dawn will address this, the city will not take on any costs in these types of districts without a development agreement in place and without incentive coming in order to do a project. If nothing happens for the next 10 years, we won't take on any costs to do anything out there to make it more attractive to be developed. This is, again, just one of those tools in our toolbox of economic development to get a project going out on the east side. And with that, Mayor, you might have to make Dawn the host again so she can share her PowerPoint.
Yep, I'm going to do that right now. You should be ready.
Okay, are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So as Ryan mentioned, this would be TID 13, excuse me, on the east side. And for this area, it's not as large of an area, but its current tax base value as we create this, as it exists now, is about $6.5 million. This too will be created as a blight district and with a 27-year maximum life. And the survey and the inventory of the property, it's just under 99% of the area is considered in meeting that statutory definition of blight. Here too, there would be public infrastructure costs and potential development incentives. A similar financing plan was approached for this, where the infrastructure would most likely be an upfront tax exempt issuance by the debt or by the city, the debt issuance. However, you know, depending on the development that comes forward, that is certainly an opportunity that can be looked at for another type of financing mechanism, or a developer upfront finance and done as a pay-go. For the analysis, however, we've done a tax-exempt debt issuance. Here too, any incentive, whether it's determined to be pay-go or upfront, would be financed either with municipal revenue obligation, which is a pay-go over time, or a tax-exempt finance or taxable financing, but undertaken by the city. As both Ryan and the mayor mentioned, there would be a developer's incentive that would be undertaken before any incentive is provided, a development agreement, however, and that agreement would be very specific in terms of what the incentives are and the conditions in which it's provided. Again, as we mentioned before, it's important that the timing of any expenditures coincides with any potential development, so that you mitigate the risk on the city and you're not undertaking debt up front and waiting for that development to happen. So again, the analysis of this area, the increment value of the potential increment value is about $35 million for a type of development that may take place in this area. And over that 27 years, it would generate about $16.3 million of tax increment revenue. The same assumptions as TID 11, no appreciation, and a constant tax rate. With those philosophies in place, this district would close in 2048, which is the statutory life of the district. On this particular page, we have the proposed boundary that makes up this district area. So all the area that's in red are the parcels that would be included. The rules of TID, they have to be full, complete parcels, and they have to be contiguous, in which they are for this district, as well as what they were for 11. This schedule is also in your project plan is the projects that we've identified, about $15.3 million. Again, it's utility and street extensions and development incentives, some stormwater improvement, and any other administrative and financing costs for the city. But again, most of it is potential development incentives in terms of needed cost. Here, as we talked earlier, this district is not there is not something right outside the door waiting to take place. So we've estimated the first phase of this construction, which is area 3 that's been identified, would not potentially happen until 2024. And that's phased out over a few years. And the other 2 areas starting in 2025 and 2028. So again, this is a little more delayed development. If something happens sooner, great, or there could be an allowance for something to take place a little later. The value assumption and the tax rate projections for future revenue is identified here, similar to the last analysis that we shared with you. Constant tax rate at the city's current equalized tax rate or consolidated tax rate, and no appreciation. So the revenue projected for this, if the development starts in 2024, would start coming in 2026. The schedule here then is the cash flow projection. Again, the first few years, there's no increment coming in. Any costs the city incurs for upfront for the creation of this district would be subsidized for a short period of time by funds from other sources. And then once the district starts developing, those would be recovered, and the district would support any of the financing that is proposed here. Again, being done with a potential for a few debt issuances, and a substantial amount of it would be as a municipal revenue obligation or on a pay-go basis, those yet to be determined as the development comes forward. And the analysis prepared for this one shows that if the timing of the development happens and all the costs are undertaken the district would close at the end of its statutory life with a positive balance. So there would be no additional advances from the city. And if they time the projects accordingly, that should be the case throughout the life of this district.
Okay. Dawn, anything else to add?
I have nothing further. I do have a, the last couple of slides here, we talk again about that 12%. That's the reason we're even doing these 3 districts or considering these 3 districts at this time. Once the state certifies values on August 15th, you will be tipped out and will not be in a position to add any new districts. So timing wise, we've developed a schedule. Ryan addressed that a little bit earlier. We had a meeting this morning with the overlapping taxing entities, the Joint Review Board. This evening, you're holding the hearing on the these 2 districts. If those move forward out of the Plan Commission, the City Council would be considering 11 and 13, potentially at their meeting on July 20th. And the 27th, we would be back to talk about district number 12. And then as long as that's approved before the 15th, which is timed out for the 10th of August, the overlapping taxing entities would meet one more time for consideration of all 3 of the districts. They set that meeting this morning on for August 13th. And then between then and the end of October, we would be certifying and providing everything to the Department of Revenue for final approval by them for the creation. And that concludes my comments, unless there's questions that I can answer.
Thank you, Dawn. If you could turn over the hosting portion to me.
Yes, I will.
And then I can open up the public hearing. But before we do that, I just want to point out that District 13 proposal is probably the most important one for me personally, just because I know that we have been working with developers from time to time on some of the properties that are available out there, and none of them have panned out. Part of that being is because they're telling us that it's difficult to cash flow these things, and without some incentive from the city, which would include some potential infrastructure like a frontage road, we just can't do anything. So they're sitting there empty, and I know there's people that are looking to do things with them. All right, there we go. Now I'm back on. So I will declare our Director Kanoski, anything you want to add before we start the public hearing?
Just so folks are aware, this was one of the development projections that I did personally. Just threw some ideas out there, wherein on the south side of the TIF, the proposed TIF along Jefferson Street, and likely the Algoma extension, we would have some type of row housing or duplex housing to create some or add on to the existing neighborhoods that are down there. Between Algoma and Ellis, my projections were some type of higher density apartment housing. And then north of Ellis Street along the Highway 10 corridor, reserve that for commercial and office use. Just so as we come through and we see, okay, where the heck did the director come up with these projections? That's really what I was thinking about when putting this together. It's a conservative estimate. I don't think it's anything that's way crazy. It could happen, it could not happen. But that's when we were putting these types of plans together and we make these projections. That's what we were basing it off of, that kind of land use.
Thank you, Director. All right, I will declare the public hearing open. If you have comments in regards to the proposal for TID 13, now would be the time. There you go. Ryan Toole, unmute yourself. State your name for the record, please.
Here we go. My name is Ryan Toole, and I represent RBR Joint Venture, the majority owner of TID District number 13. I'm a real estate consultant, not an attorney. And I would just like to thank the commissioners and the city staff for their foresight and creativity in pursuing, in advance of need, a TID district for this site. We support it very much. We've had the same experience as the city has. A number of parties have begun discussions with us and then advised us that they clearly need some additional assistance because of the cost of preparing the site. There may be demolition costs. There are extraordinary infrastructure costs that would go with redeveloping the site. We have been marketing this site using professional real estate agents, first CBRE out of Madison, and more recently NAI Pfefferly out of Appleton. And they've had the same experience, that developers that they've talked to, their first question is there any sort of tax increment financing available? I think it's going to be very, very important to repositioning this property. The property is obsolete and it is clearly blighted, and the owners are very pleased that the city is taking this initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The public hearing is still open. Public hearing remains open. And for the third time, the public hearing is open.
Bob Ware.
Bob Ware. Yes, sir. Mr. Ware, go ahead.
Basically, I have a couple of questions. Maybe they can be answered. Number one, both of these TIDs, and I assume TID 12 also, are going to require some infrastructure work. Additionally, there's probably going to be some developer incentives. The city's fund balance, I don't believe, is very healthy right now with this current year.
Actually, Mr. Ware, our fund balance is absolutely fine.
Okay. However, I don't believe it would support all three TIDs requirements as far as infrastructure and incentives. Is there a limit on borrowing that the city has for these three developments? That's the first thing. Basically, that's it. I guess just, you know, I'm concerned that we'd be pushing up against the fund balance or borrowing limits. If somebody could answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. We'll get to those answers after the public hearing. Public hearing is still open. Public hearing remains open. And for the final time, the public hearing is open. Trevor. Sure, under the wire as usual. Go ahead.
So I share some of the same concerns. Oh, Trevor Rourke, 601 Washington Avenue. Share some of the same concerns that Bob was mentioning. So I do understand the need and desire to turn this into a TID because of the vacancies and blight. But I do have concern as well because right across the street is a strip mall that's been there for a while, completely vacant. And then there's other storefronts that are high turnover. And then this TIF itself, this proposed TIF, is 99%, according to the presentation, 99% blight. So my thinking is if we incentivize development here, we'll most likely get a big box again, hotel, or another out-of-town developer. If they stay for 5 years, great. What if they get offered another incentive that's bigger in Wausau or Clover, or whatever it might be? Seems like it's a more transient type of business proposal. In talking with this earlier to Director Kronosky, this area is important for kind of the entryway from the east, for Point. And I totally get that. When you're driving in, it doesn't look good, right? Especially to the south. But what is more likely to draw people here and to stay here? Is it the next Taco John's, or is it the better infrastructure that doesn't include potholes, right? So I think really, if we're looking at long term, I would hope that we start really meeting our maintenance needs in our long-term infrastructure and not build new stuff, not build new infrastructure, frontage roads, for example, extending new streets. I really think it just seems like not a good investment, high risk right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And the public hearing remains open. Public hearing is still open. And for the final time, the public hearing remains open. Okay. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, no virtual hands raised, no physical hands, nothing in the chat room, I will declare the public hearing closed and we will move back to the commission. In response to Mr. Ware's question, I don't think Corey's on here, but I can tell you that our fund balance is on the upper end of what's generally recommended. We are on the higher end in regards to our fund balance. Fund balance, for those of you who don't know, is basically like our savings account. So we are very good in that regard. The borrowing, on the other hand, is also on the upper end. Over the past 15, 20 years, borrowing has increased significantly. When Mayor Westcott was in, I think we were somewhere in the 7 million range. After Mayor Halverson left, we were up about 35 million. So we were on the upper end of our self-imposed borrowing limit. However, none of that really occurs. We're not going to do any additional borrowing unless there is a project that's there. And that also speaks to Mr. Rourke's concerns. We don't give away 100% of the TIF anymore, the TIF incentive. Our goal is to make sure that now that we have a maintenance plan for all of our capital projects, including roads, that any new developments are going to pay for their roads in perpetuity, or any other infrastructure for that matter. That falls under the developers agreement, not necessarily the creation of the TIF. Each development agreement, as we said earlier, stands on its own merit. And when we negotiate those, we are not going to put ourselves in a hole again. And that's something that we've committed to under this administration, and we're going to continue to do that. So the answer to Mr. Ware's question is fund balance is absolutely fine. Borrowing is on the upper end of the limits. However, we wouldn't take on additional debt unless there was a significant means to pay it back. Director Konoski, anything that you would like to add in regards to the questions that came up during the public hearing?
Yeah, I would just state that we don't utilize fund balance to pay for TIF expenditures. The developments within the TIF itself pay to service the debt that the city takes on to do those projects. So that's an important piece of this puzzle.
Right, and I got so hooked on the fund balance portion. I don't want anybody to think that we're not okay on the fund balance. We're very good on fund balance. We're okay on our savings.
Mayor Dawn Gunderson has been raising her hand.
Gotcha. Sorry, you're up in that corner.
Yeah.
Dawn, go ahead.
I just wanted to speak to the question on the debt. While you probably are concerned about the borrowing that you have outstanding, the state does have a statutory limitation on your borrowing, and it's 5% of your equalized value. So what I can tell you is you have $2 billion, over $2 billion of equalized value. That puts that limit at $106 million for general obligation, and you currently are at 21.8. So you do have a lot of capacity. Do you want to get to that level? Obviously not, but I just, just to assure you that, you could undertake a borrowing for some of these and you'd still be at a pretty decent level of your outstanding debt capacity.
Thank you, Dawn.
Certainly.
Okay, commissioners, the next item up is item number 6, consideration of possible action on the resolution designating proposed boundaries and approving a project plan for tax incremental district number 13. What are your Alderperson Kneebone?
This is also near and dear to my heart, being not only in my district, but my neighborhood. I've driven by this site for 14 years, and God knows it fits the description of blight. We've done really well in infill housing. We've done really well with the downtown. It'd be really nice to do something really well out here on the East End for us folks. We are part of Point still, but it has to be the right developer. I don't want another Taco John's out here either. I didn't want the gas station on the corner of Badger and Highway 10. There's sort of a frontage road there. There's a backage road that comes behind Applebee's, McDonald's, Fazoli's, and loops around to the stoplight on 10 at Elizabeth. That wouldn't be a whole lot to take care of. I think there hasn't been anybody interested in 14 years. There may not be anybody interested in another 10, although Mr. Toole, I certainly would appreciate whatever you can do to bring a really nice mixed use development out here. I think this is prime for housing, business, maybe a nice restaurant, something. But if we don't have this tool in our toolbox, this area could be blighted for another 20 or 30 years.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other thoughts or a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve per staff recommendations.
Thank you. And seconded by Alderperson Nebo. Any further discussion on the resolution? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution for the proposed boundaries and approving the project plan for tax incremental District 13, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes unanimously. Let me turn the hosting back over to Director Konoski, and then we will move on to item number 7, which is a request from Lineage Service Cold Storage Wisconsin LLC for a new site plan review for the expansion of the existing cold storage warehouse facility located within the planned industrial district at 5700 EM Cops Drive. Director.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And I'm actually going to turn it over to our green planner and zoning administrator, Adam Kuhn, who, before we get started, I will add, has done just a phenomenal job in his first few weeks on the job. He has really taken this position by the horns and has done just an excellent job with the department. So with that, Planner Kuhn, this is all yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the kind words, Director Karnowski. So just to give a little overview of the application request. So the applicant, Adam Tittman, is proposing to construct a 5th phase onto their existing cold storage warehouse facility, and the approximate size of this stage of this 5th phase will be 166,636 square feet, and that will encompass 20 loading docks, 21 staging stalls, and now overall this 5th phase will be similar to in appearance and in function to the previous phases that were approved by the Plan Commission most recently last month for the 4th phase. Now going a little bit further into the 5th phase itself, roughly half of the addition, a little over 74,000 square feet, will comprise of additional freezer space. Now directly east of this existing freezer space will be swinging and tempering warehouse space, which will allow for the storage of goods that may need a different cooling capacity than what the existing goods are stored as at the facility. And then lastly, the southernmost portion of the building will house, again, the 20 dock doors and the 21 staging positions for the semi-trucks to park. And the far southeast corner of the site will house a 2-story office, which will be approximately about 7,400 square feet. Now going a little bit further into the site plan itself, you can see, looking at an aerial view of the proposed site along with the existing phases already constructed. So you can see that phase 5 is pretty similar in size to phase 3, and then phase 4, which again was approved last month, is located directly to the west of the site. Now looking a little bit closer into the proposed phase 5, you can see the locations of the freezer warehouse space, the swinging and tempering warehouse spaces, the docks, and the staging areas, and then again, the office on the far southeast corner of the lot. Now, overall, staff finds that the phase 5 proposal is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan as it intends to develop into a business or industrial park. Next, all applicable setback requirements, zoning requirements, parking requirements are met with this proposal. There is also a planned extension onto EM Cops Drive that will provide an additional access point to the development itself. And lastly, Lineage is also requesting that EM Cops Drive and the utilities are extended to provide a second access point onto the facility and for additional water flow to the property for the phase 5 and for any future functions as well. And now next, Staff would ultimately conclude in approving the recommended request with the following conditions. First, that a stormwater management plan shall be submitted, finding that either the proposed stormwater retention pond on the southeast corner of the lot will be adequate for this expansion, and if not, the additional retention areas should be addressed if that determination is found. Next, the landscaping plan shall be submitted and reviewed by community development staff, and it must include the 6 highlighted options shown on the screen, starting with there being landscaping and screening down towards that the stormwater detention area shall be maintained. And then lastly, staff shall have the authority to approve any minor changes to the site plan as needed. So with that, I'll take any of your questions.
Any questions for Adam?
No.
Okay. Yeah, with Service Cold Storage and now Lineage Logistics have been an excellent partner with the city, and their continued expansion proves that they are a very successful company, and we hope for great things in the future here. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
Mr. Mayor, this is Cooper. I would move approval of the request as presented, subject to staff recommended conditions.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Haynes will second.
Seconded by Haynes. Motion by Cooper, seconded by Haynes. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion is adopted unanimously. Now, the favorite part of my agenda today is the item number 8, which is the Community Development Department's annual report. This is when we get to remind you, commissioners, and the general public of all the good things that our Community Development Department has completed in 2019. So, Director Konoski, turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. 2019 was one heck of a year in community development. We'll kind of break it down. There's a lot more to community development than just planning and economic development. Community development encompasses 6 different divisions: economic development, historic preservation, neighborhood improvement, building permit or building inspection, city assessing, and then city planning and zoning itself. So not all of those divisions get the spotlight in public, but they are really critical components of city and of the function of the city itself. So for economic development, projects started or completed in 2019, the Provident Nutraceutical Addition, Martin Machining, which is nearing completion, Stevens Point Housing, the former Kmart site, although we hit some stumbling blocks, we worked through that development agreement and they are back under construction again. The Berkshire Apartments, downtown Stevens Point, they started working on the 3rd story this last week, so that's been really exciting to see how the street is starting to frame along Water Street, and then the 3rd Street extension south of Clark Street. The Warzala Publishing Company edition, we did final that out a few weeks ago. Great addition to a great company. Same with Scafidi, they added their collision center. The multi-tenant commercial building on Windy Drive that now houses El Mezcal and Blinker Construction. Holy Spirit, next to the EWSP campus, added a significant addition and remodel. A Burger King and Taco John's were part of that projects that were started or completed during 2019, and then the Children's Discovery Center addition. Neighborhood improvement, Mark Cordes serves as our neighborhood improvement coordinator. Again, in 2019, we established the trash canvas program in downtown Stevens Point, wherein in working with Create Portage County, the city provided the opportunity for folks to paint our trash receptacles. Horrendously successful program in creating a new sense of place in our downtown shopping district. And so for 2020, we've opted to do that again. If you haven't had a chance, there's some really excellent 2020 trash canvas pieces out there right now. Also, something that we're really proud of in community development is the creation of the Rent Ready program, which works with the Hunger Poverty Prevention Partnership to help reduce the homelessness problem, or the homelessness issue that we've continued to run into, by providing consistent housing for those who may be unable to provide it themselves. And so Mark's taken a really proactive role in that. And again, it's been really successful. I believe we currently have 5 active members of the Rent Ready program that have been placed and are contributing to their own rent, and we're trying to get them back up on their feet. Something we did in 2019, which is different than what we've done in the past, we provided extended compliance for large exterior building issues, things like roof, siding, things of that nature, that major expensive costs that instead of saying, okay, you have 30 days to replace it, we might identify it in the fall of the year and provide them until early summer to have that problem addressed. We've seen pretty significant compliance. If we provide folks who are running into issues the opportunity to come in compliance, it's been much more successful, 85% compliance, and the remaining 15% either didn't have the financial means to do the work, or they were late to remedy the maintenance issues that were there. Again, the city does also have a grant program to help address some of these larger exterior building issues. We continue to utilize the pink slip warning program, 84% compliance in 2019. We leave the pink slips on the door or on items that may be in violation, warning them that, hey, here's a non-compliance, here's what you have to do to remedy it, and a much more proactive approach to neighborhood improvement, as opposed to just simply sending a letter out and hoping that the violation becomes compliant. We continue to provide off-campus student housing educational sessions. This is something that we've done for the last few years, and it's helped, I think, to address some of the concerns that we run into, especially in the core of the city, where we have a large student housing population. As I mentioned earlier, we have the grant and loan fund available to our residents. Neighbor Helping Neighbors, a $1,000 grant that we provide. We also provide a residential structure demolition and a few zero-interest loan programs, most of which are administered out of the Redevelopment Authority. We also have the voluntary rental inspection program. We didn't add any properties in 2019, but we are trying to become more proactive in encouraging our landlords to take advantage of this program and really use it as a way to encourage residents or encourage tenants to utilize those properties. This is just a breakdown of the number of cases. As you can see, our case numbers are up. Annual revenue was also up as a result thereof. This is all also within the packet itself, and that actually breaks it down even further. Historic preservation, we were provided $100,000 out of the general fund in 2019 for the facade grant program. We have another $100,000 designated for 2020. Wildcard Corporation, which is they're currently remodeling the former Book World building on Main Street, was the sole user of the facade grant program. They were awarded $27,483.60. If you haven't had the opportunity to peek in the window of the Book World building to see what incredible work Wildcard's done there, I would strongly recommend it, including exposing the original tin ceiling and finding other tin that matches the tin that's in there to replace pieces that are deteriorated. In this specific instance, they utilized the program for window replacement, door replacement, and then tuck pointing in the front and rear of the building. The Certified Local Government Grant provided us the opportunity to get grant funding to provide the Clark Street and Main Street Historic District application. We were able to include that as part of it. We have not heard from the federal government yet if we've received that designation for the Clark Street and Main Street historic area, but it has been approved at the state level. And of course, design review, looking at the number of developments that occurred in 2019 within the Historic Preservation District. Permits and inspections, here's just a breakdown of our residential and commercial building permits. A really successful year in 2019 for commercial remodel. Single family housing was consistent, which is nice to see. Two-family residential. The townhouses on 4th don't technically count because they're not two-family, they're single-family zero lot line. But you can see that our residential remodels were also up in 2019. I will tell you our residential remodels for 2020 are going to exceed this, just because this thing called COVID, I think it's pronounced, and a lot of people have home projects that they've been working on. Planning and zoning, this is the breakdown in 2019 for what we've done, staying pretty consistent with the number of, historically, the number of planning requests that we've received. We continue to work on the comprehensive plan update. Unfortunately, SEH, who is the city's consultant in the comp plan update, has not been the easiest to work with. They've had a number of staff turnovers in their community development department, and so we continue to work through those issues. We turned over some of the responsibilities to county planning to assist us in getting this giant project across the finish line. We're hopeful that that will occur yet in 2020, if not early 2021. Zoning code rewrite, we decided to pump the brakes on until after the adoption of the comprehensive plan. I think there were some expectations of the zoning code rewrite that were above and beyond what is reasonable for city staff. And so we've decided to just hold off on that until after we're able to get the comprehensive plan under our belt, utilize that to make informed decisions on rewriting the city's zoning code, which was currently written in 1979 and changed a number of times, most recently with the tourist touring house. Targeted area master plans, we talked a little bit about tonight. The Division Street Corridor Targeted Area Master Plan is completed. That was adopted in this last February. We are done with the Division Street Targeted Area Master Plan. I'm sorry, with the Downtown Targeted Area Master Plan. That is completed. We were hoping to bring Vanderwall and Associates up to a physical meeting sometime later this summer to go over it. That's not looking great right now, and so it's likely that we'll be adopting it formally either late summer or early fall, likely via internet meeting that we've been having. City assessing and property assessment, again, nothing significantly different. Obviously, we had an increase in the total assessed value of the city with the number of projects that came on. Remember, the 2019 values are based on January 1 of 2019. And so if a project was half completed at that time, it won't come on as a fully assessed property until January 1 of 2020. In the property assessment world, that January 1st date is pretty much the only date that you have to worry about as it relates to property assessment. You can see the changes in our districts from 2019 to 2018. Some of these changes were for personal property adjustments as opposed to significant decreases in property assessment. I'm not quite certain what happened in TIF number 7, but it's something that Corey and I have started to look into as to why that assessment dropped. I believe part of it was a change in the total assessment that was not challenged, but asked to be reduced due to some sales. And that's all I have for the 2019 annual report. This did come out a little later than normal because of COVID and losing a full-time staff member. And so I do apologize that hopefully for 2020, we'll have it done earlier in the spring as opposed to midsummer, but we have kind of taken everything we had to with punches and we're moving on from there. So.
Right, thank you, Director. And I can't say enough about the Director and his entire staff. We've had a few new people there. Adam, as Director Konoski said, is doing a spectacular job. We've taken on some additional staff in recent years, but I think the successes of the department are a testament to what additional staff can do given the right direction. So we appreciate Director Konoski and his entire staff. And hopefully very soon we're going to be having one more staff member, right? Maria's due just about any day now.
That's right.
There you go. Maria just said she heard the secretary is amazing. I heard that too. Yeah, she's taking notes. She's taking notes for two now. Alderperson Cindy Nabel had a question, Director, regarding creating a landlord registration. Cindy?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Director Kronowski, I know that we had voted, I think it's before you came to work as the director, but that there had been a vote about the voluntary inspection plan for rental properties, which you talked about. But there was also the part that there was going to be a registration created with information of landlords of whatever amount of information they could have that you'd be able to have. And I know that I haven't seen anything on that. I wondered where we're at on that.
I'm not 100% certain. That was approved prior to my tenure. I'll definitely touch base with Mark. We do, we have a working relationship with a number of the landlords in the city, and we do try to address issues as they come up, especially in the core. If we're able to, make a quick phone call and say, hey, there's issues with couches abandoned on the side of the road adjacent to your property, we try to do that. We try to be as proactive as possible with these things. Nobody likes receiving a letter stating that they're in violation. And so again, we go back to being proactive, trying to create a good working relationship with the landlords. And so we already have a lot of that information, but I definitely think it's worthwhile to look into. And if that's the direction the council has chosen to go, I'll make sure it gets implemented.
Director, what I'd like to do is turn it over to that spectacular secretary, Maria. Maria can give you some background information in regards to that because she's been here through the whole thing. Maria.
Hi, thanks, Mayor. Secretary Moore for the Community Development Department. Yeah, we are still talking about the rent registration program. The original thought was to utilize our current program to do the registration, create that online portal so people could come on, register their rentals, all rentals within the city of Stevens Point. The issue being the program is not working the way we need it to work, so it's very difficult to move forward with that registration program. We are currently looking at alternative options, but as of last week, we're still talking about it. So it's not something that has gone away. We are still actively pursuing different methods on how we can get that list up. But yes, we're still actively pursuing that.
Thank you, Maria. I know that I had talked to our, not inspector, but I'm trying to think of censor that does the census. And Steve had said that they have, they share a lot of things between your department and that it might be able to be possible for them to be able to get that kind of information for you to be able to separate it out because their program can do a lot of different things more than what I know yours is very limited for the inspection department.
And Alder Nabel, you meant the assessor, not the census.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Steve Shepro, our city assessor.
You wouldn't like that, no. No.
Okay. Alderperson Jennings asked if Director Kronowski, if you had an update. I know Corey would probably be best to talk to about the numbers, but an update on the downtown TIF district, or I'm sorry, the bid district, rather, the bid district. You and I probably last met with the downtown businesses. That was a while ago, and it seemed to be pretty well received.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember my timeline here. It might have been in early 2020. We did a public information meeting on the business improvement district that was proposed to be downtown. I would like to keep that project moving forward. Unfortunately, what we were dealt with COVID and the loss of a full-time staffer and a number of other things, my priorities as a director kind of got shifted. I'd like to bring that conversation back up and continue moving forward with likely establishing a bid district for 2022. Likely because we're already midway through 2020 here. And by the time that we would create the district and we could start levying the additional assessment or property tax on those properties within the business improvement district, it would likely not occur, or likely wouldn't take effect until January 1 of 2022.
Thank you, Director. And yeah, I think it would be a pretty big bonus downtown.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the annual report? Don't see anything.
Bob Weir.
Bob, yes, go ahead.
The director, you mentioned the rewrite of Chapter 23, the zoning code, that you're going to hold off on that. What is the status of Chapter 21 on property maintenance? I know the Public Protection Committee has sent it back a couple of times. Is there any progress on that one?
Bob, the direction of the Public Protection Committee was to delay further conversation until we were meeting in person again. The Public Protection Committee felt it was important that the rewrite of that chapter was so large and intricate that we needed to have these conversations in person as opposed to doing it via Zoom. So we have not done anything further on Chapter 21. We do have the first step or the first revision that we'd like to bring back to public protection. But again, that won't happen until after we start meeting in person
again. Okay, thank you. Any last questions? Seeing none, then thank you very much, Director, again, to you and your staff. Hasn't been quite a year yet, but it's coming along very nicely. So we appreciate you and everything you do.
Thank you.
Item number 9 is the June 2020 monthly report. Director.
Thank you. June 2020, the major movement there, of course, was the groundbreaking for Delta Dental in the business park with a declared valuation of $28.25 million. And so we did have a significant bump in the permit fees collected. As you can see, our permit fees are up as compared to previous years pretty significantly. There's been a lot of busybodies in the department going out to inspections and doing inspections, things of that nature. So other than that, nothing else earth-shattering on this. A lot of fence permits, a lot of remodels, kitchen remodels, bathroom remodels. New windows has been a crazy amount of permits that have come in as well, and re-roofing. So glad to see that residents continue to invest money in their existing homes, especially during these uncertain economic times.
And we've taken care of all of the snow and ice issues finally. So I don't see any in June, so we're in good shape there.
Somehow, some way.
Right? Time takes care of everything, right? All right. With that, our agenda is exhausted. And I'm sorry, we have a staff update yet. Staff update?
Yes. So a few items. Please block off July 27th at 6 o'clock for the final public hearing of TIF number 12. Very important for the commission to be able to meet and have a quorum. Those notices will be going out, actually went out today for the updated agenda. Second, Maria is leaving us for a few weeks to go on maternity leave. We wish her the best of luck, and we can't wait for her to return. We have extended an offer to a limited term employee who will hopefully be starting in the next week. So we're excited to provide some continued continuity within the department and a friendly face for folks to call and schedule their inspections with. Other than that, I don't think that I have anything else to report.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Now our agenda is exhausted, and we will adjourn at 7:38. Thank you all.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.